just makes it quieter. The house. It used to echo with his voice. Now it hums with absence. My son moved back home after the funeral. Said he didn't want me to be alone. And I didn't argue. At first, it helped. The noise, the movement. Someone filling space. But slowly it became something else. He started doing the little things. Putting on the kettle before I came down. Folding my blanket at night. Sitting close, asking if I was okay, not out of obligation, but like he saw me. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was just lonely. That I missed being touched. But that night it was raining. I was on the couch, curled under a blanket I couldn't feel. He walked in, didn't say much, just pulled the blanket up higher, tucked it under my chin, and whispered, "Mom, you need to sleep." And I don't know what happened inside me, but something cracked. Not a scream, not a break. A shift, a deep, aching shift. And I remember thinking, this isn't supposed to feel like this. But it did. You think you know where this story is going? You don't. Subscribe now to Heartfelt Tales Unfold. Because the deepest betrayals, they don't always come from strangers. Sometimes, they come from the people who once held your hand at your weakest. And made you feel seen right before everything fell apart. I'm 48. I've spent most of my life being what people needed. A mother. A wife. A nurse. A listener. I used to think that was enough. My husband. He was a good man. A provider. Reliable. But love with him was quiet. Distant. It was in the things he did, not the words he said. And over time, the silence between us grew heavier than any argument could have been. I stopped asking for what I needed. He stopped noticing I was asking at all. By the time he got sick, I'd already felt alone for years. I took care of him. Every pill. Every sleepless night. Every whispered prayer while he slept and I stared at the ceiling. And when he passed, I didn't cry the way they expected. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because I'd already been grieving long before death showed up. My son came home after the funeral. Said he wanted to help. Said he didn't want me going through it all alone. 23. Just finished school. I remember thinking, he's too young to be taking care of me. But I didn't say no. At first, it was small things. Fixing things around the house. Running errands. Making dinner when I forgot to eat. Then it was the quiet things. Pouring my tea without asking how I take it, because he already knew. Setting the thermostat before I got cold. Turning on the porch light before dusk. Things his father never remembered to do. The house. It's small. Walls covered in old photographs, some tilted slightly on their nails. There's a frame in the hallway where his father's smile used to comfort me. Now it just stares. The couch still has the same floral cushions from 20 years ago. There's a crack in the kitchen tile no one ever fixed. It's not a broken house, but it's tired. Like me. And at night, when the dishes were done and the lights were low, that's when it got hardest. The way he'd check on me before going to bed. The way he'd pause at my door, say, "Good night, Mom," in that deep, soft voice that had grown into a man's while I was too busy grieving to notice. I started listening for that pause, waiting for it. And when it didn't come one night, I found myself standing in the hallway, hand on his doorknob, unsure what I was looking for. People told me I was lucky to have him back home. But some nights, his presence only made the silence louder. He filled spaces his father used to occupy, without even realizing it. The creak in the floorboard outside my door. The smell of aftershave in the bathroom. The second cup of coffee brewing in the morning before I was even awake. All these little things. They started to settle into me. Not like a storm, but like a memory I hadn't lived yet. I kept telling myself he's just being kind. But kindness doesn't make your hands shake. Kindness doesn't make you avoid mirrors. Kindness doesn't make you wonder what your heartbeat is trying to say. It was raining that night. The kind of rain that doesn't stop, just lingers. I remember the rhythm of it on the roof, the soft tapping on the windows. The lights flickered once, then again, and then everything went dark. I lit a few candles. He brought down an old lantern from the attic, one his father used to keep in the garage. We sat in the living room. No TV, no distractions. Just the soft hum of rain, the flicker of candlelight, and two people with too much unspoken between them. He opened a bottle of wine, said it had been sitting too long. I didn't argue. We poured 2 glasses, and then we talked. Not about grief, not about Dad, about silly things. Old memories. That time I burned the turkey on Thanksgiving and we ended up ordering pizza. He told me I used to laugh so much when he was a kid. I didn't even realize I was laughing until he said it. There it is, he said. I haven't seen that in a long time. You still look beautiful when you smile. I froze. Just for a second. Because there was something in the way he said it. Not playful. Not like a son teasing his mom. It was quiet. Real. And it landed in a part of me that had been asleep for too long. I didn't respond. Just took a slow sip of wine and stared into the candlelight. He didn't say anything else. Just sat there beside me. Close, but not too close. Still, the air between us, it changed. I told myself it was just the wine. Just the darkness. Just the memories. But that night, I saw him differently. Not just as my son, but as a man. A man who saw me, not the worn-out version. Not the widow. Just me. And I felt seen. For the first time in a very long time. The moment passed. We said goodnight. I went to bed alone. Told myself to forget it. But the next morning, I came downstairs and found my favorite tea already steeping. I hadn't told him I was running low on it. And yet, there it was. Hot. Waiting. And in the hallway, the scent of his cologne. Faint. Subtle. But enough. Enough to make my stomach twist. I told myself I was imagining things. That I was reading too much into it. But was I? The days after that night felt different. Not in any big, obvious way. But in the quiet. In the way I paused at the top of the stairs when I heard him humming in the kitchen. In the way I watched his hands as he cooked, steady and sure, so much like his father's, and yet not. I started wearing my wedding ring again. Not out of devotion, but as a barrier. A reminder. But it didn't sit right on my hand anymore. It felt heavy. So I took it off. Then put it back on. Then took it off again. I couldn't decide what felt worse, wearing it or not. I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, hearing his voice in my head, "You still look beautiful when you smile." That night played in loops. The candlelight. The wine. The silence. And the way he looked at me. Not past me. Not through me. At me. It had been so long since someone did that. Since someone made me feel like I was still a woman. Still there. I told myself he's just being kind. That's all it is. But kindness doesn't make your breath hitch when he brushes past you in the hallway. Kindness doesn't make your skin remember a touch that never happened. Kindness doesn't explain the heat that rises in your chest when he leans in too close, just to grab a mug behind you. I started noticing the little things. The way he'd glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking. How he'd pause before saying, "Mom," like the word sat awkwardly in his mouth. I'd catch myself fixing my hair before I went downstairs. Changing my blouse if it was too worn, too faded. Why was I doing that? And then I'd remember the last years of my marriage. How invisible I felt. How my husband barely touched me unless it was routine. How I'd dress up sometimes just to see if he'd notice. And he didn't. He never did. But he does. My son. He notices. I hate myself for thinking it. For feeling it. But it's there. And I can't unknow it. One night we were watching a show together. Something light. Something forgettable. My hands were trembling. Grief still does that sometimes. And without saying a word, he reached over and placed his hand on my wrist. Gently. Just enough to still the shake. And I didn't pull away. I didn't even flinch. I just sat there, feeling the weight of his touch like it was the only real thing in the room. And in that moment, I stopped pretending. I didn't know if it was love, or loneliness, or something darker. But it was there, breathing between us. Our conversations changed. They got longer, slower, not just surface talk. Weather, groceries, appointments, but real things. He'd ask me what I used to dream about before I got married, what I loved about music, why I stopped painting, questions his father never thought to ask. And I told him things I hadn't told anyone, not even myself. I don't know if it was the wine that night, or the sound of his voice, or the way his eyes never left mine when I answered, but I felt myself softening, slipping, wanting. We were watching a movie together, something old and familiar. I don't remember the plot, just that our shoulders were close, our breath slow, and then his hand reached for mine. Not fast, not hesitant, like it had been waiting. I looked down. His fingers wrapped around mine, and I didn't move. I just let it happen. And in that stillness, something inside me broke open. Not with fear, not with shame, but with relief. Later that week, I was crying in the kitchen. Quiet tears, grief has its way of sneaking up on you like that. He came in, didn't say a word. Just walked over and wrapped his arms around me. I fell into his chest like I used to fall into my husband's. But this felt warmer. He didn't let go right away. Neither did I. And then he kissed my forehead. Soft, slow, too tender to ignore. I felt that kiss in places I didn't want to admit still existed. That night, I had a dream. I was younger, lighter, spinning in a kitchen full of music, laughing in someone's arms. But when I looked up, it wasn't my husband's face. It was his. I woke up sweating, heart pounding. I sat at the edge of the bed, whispering to myself, "You're his mother. You're his mother." But it didn't help. I stopped answering my sister's calls. I couldn't face the sound of someone who still saw me as good. I stopped looking in mirrors. I didn't want to see what was changing in my eyes. Every night, we grew closer. Not with words, but with silence. With the way our bodies leaned just slightly more. With the way he lingered when he said goodnight. It was like we were circling something neither of us could name. A line drawn in sand. And every night, the tide came closer. Until it finally touched our feet. Then came the night he didn't go back to his room. It started like every other night. The sound of dishes being rinsed. The low hum of the television. His quiet footsteps down the hallway. But something felt off in my chest. Like a weight sitting where breath should be. I tried to ignore it. Told myself it would pass. But my hands were shaking. My vision blurred. My chest tightened so hard it felt like I was being pulled under. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't think. Then he was there, kneeling beside me on the floor. His arms wrapped around me so tight I could feel the strength in his body. And yet, all I felt was softness. "Breathe with me, Mom. Just breathe." But even the word Mom felt strange on his lips. It sounded like a question. Like he didn't know if he should still say it. And in that moment, neither did I. I buried my face into his shoulder. Felt his hands cradling the back of my head, gently rocking me like I used to do for him when he was a child. But now he was the one holding me together. And I wasn't fighting it. I was clinging to it. My breathing slowed. The panic faded. But we didn't move. We stayed there, locked in something neither of us had asked for. Something that didn't feel wrong, just forbidden. And then I looked up. His eyes met mine. No fear. No shame. Just knowing. And I didn't think. I just let it happen. Our lips met. Soft. Still. Not rushed. Not frantic. Just two people searching for something that made the world stop spinning. A kiss that said all the things we couldn't. I pulled away first. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My heart was racing, not from panic this time, but from recognition of what we had just done. of what could never be undone. He didn't say anything, just stood, gently pulled me to my feet, and took my hand. Led me to the bedroom like it was the most natural thing in the world. We laid side by side, facing the ceiling. The space between us was small, but the distance we had crossed, it was everything. His hand brushed against mine under the blanket. I didn't move. At some point, I turned toward him. He turned too, and he reached out slowly, like he was asking permission. Brushed my hair away from my face. And in that moment, I couldn't tell if I felt safe or lost. We didn't speak. We didn't do more. But everything changed, because sometimes you don't need to go all the way to cross a line. You just need to stop pretending it doesn't exist. The next morning, the house was still. Not peaceful. Not calm. Just suspended. I made breakfast like I always do. Toast. Eggs. A little fruit. My hands moved out of habit, but nothing about me felt present. He came into the kitchen. Said good morning, softly. I nodded. Didn't look up. I couldn't. I was afraid to see if it was still there in his eyes. That tenderness. That tension. That quiet ache we'd both slipped into without warning. He sat across from me. We ate in silence. Forks against plates. The low hum of the fridge. And beneath it all, that other sound. The echo of breath shared in the dark. The imprint of a kiss neither of us had spoken about. I didn't ask him how he slept. He didn't ask me anything at all. We just moved through the motions. Two people pretending to be normal. But everything had shifted. Later that afternoon, he found me folding laundry in the living room. His voice was careful. I've been thinking. I froze. He said maybe it was time he moved out. That he could find a place nearby. That maybe I needed space. He was giving me an out. A chance to reset the clock. But all I could do was whisper, don't. He waited for more. A reason. An explanation. But I didn't give him one. Because I didn't have the words. I only had the feeling, the quiet terror of being alone again, and the louder fear of what we'd become. He stayed, but he never touched me again. No late-night conversations. No soft laughter from the hallway. Just silence. A new kind. One that filled the room like fog. One we didn't speak through. We just let it settle. I tried to go back to routine. Watered the plants. Cleaned the counters. Smiled at the neighbors when I checked the mail. But every time I passed the hallway, every time I walked by the couch where his hand had once found mine, every time I laid in bed and remembered his fingers brushing the hair from my face, it echoed, not like a scream, but like a whisper I couldn't unhear, a space in me that had been filled and then left humming with the absence of his touch. He didn't touch me again, but the space where he had echoed every night. I started writing again, not for anyone to read. Just to let the noise out of my head. Journals filled faster than I could hide them. Torn pages. Crossed out words. I'd sit at the kitchen table at midnight, scribbling thoughts I didn't want to name. Things like, was it grief? Was it love? Was it wrong, even if it never went further? I'd close the journal and press my hand to the cover like it could absorb the shame through my skin. But it didn't. Nothing did. I cried in the shower, where no one could hear me, where the water could hide the sound. I'd lean against the tile and shake, not from the cold, but from the weight of holding it all in. Some days, I'd cry because I missed my husband. Other days, because I didn't. And most days, because I didn't know which truth hurt more. I signed up to volunteer at the library, started helping with the food pantry, told myself I needed to give back. Do something good. But every time I handed someone a paper bag of canned goods, I wondered if they could see it in my face. If they knew. If they could smell the guilt on me like perfume. I felt like a fraud. Smiling. Organizing shelves. Saying, have a blessed day. While inside, I was trying to rewrite a night I could never undo. I looked at him differently now. Not just because of what happened, but because of what didn't. Because he never brought it up. Never asked. And maybe that was the cruelest part. That we both carried it, silently, as if silence could erase it. But silence doesn't make something untrue. It just buries it deeper. Some nights, I stared at the ceiling and asked myself the questions I was too afraid to say out loud. Did I manipulate his grief? Did he use mine? Were we both just trying to feel alive again, in a house full of ghosts? I don't know. I still don't know. People talk about moral lines like they're painted in bold red. But in real life, they're drawn in sand. Washed over by emotion, by touch, by longing, by things we can't explain without sounding like monsters. Was it weakness? Or was it misplaced love? A need so deep we didn't know how to fill it without breaking something? I wish I could say I found the answer, that I made peace with it. But the truth is, the line between comfort and corruption, it's thinner than we want to believe. Have you ever wanted something so quietly, so deeply, that you couldn't tell if it was hunger or shame? Something that made your breath catch, that made your chest tighten. Not because it was wrong, but because it felt too right. In the loneliest moment of your life, have you ever reached for warmth and found it in the wrong hands only to realize maybe those hands weren't wrong at all? I don't expect you to understand. I barely understand it myself. But I know what it feels like to crave something that made me ashamed to feel alive. And maybe you do too. So, if you've ever stood at that edge, between what's right and what's real, I won't ask for details. I won't ask for justification. Just truth. Drop your story in the comments. No judgment here. Just space. And if this story spoke to something you've never dared say aloud, like it reached a part of you you've tried to bury, then maybe you were meant to hear it. Maybe we both were. Like this story? Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where silence turns into stories too heavy to carry alone. Tap the bell. The next tale might echo something you've never dared put into words. Some betrayals don't explode. They whisper. Through cups of tea no one asked for. Through candles lit without meaning to. Through the trembling breath of someone who used to call you Mom, and suddenly didn't know how. I don't know what we were that night. I only know what we've never spoken of since. I only know that silence became its own kind of truth. And maybe, just maybe, that silence is the only thing keeping the memory sacred. You've reached the end of this story. Or maybe, it's only the beginning of yours. Don't leave in silence. Leave your truth below. And subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, where the heart dares to speak what the world won't.